Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we help you unlock your potential freedom through land investing, real estate investing, and entrepreneurship. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today's topic, we're discussing tools that we use to profitably buy and sell vacant land. I'm your host, Andrew Apke, joined again by my brother and business partner, Ron Apke. Before we get started, let's go over a question from one of our featured Discord members. Today's question is from Derek. Derek asked, how does a utility easement affect the price of land?
Yeah, really good question, Derek. Pretty straight to the point. As far as utility easements, so what Derek is referring to are those power lines, above ground power lines that can't run through land. They do run through land. On bigger parcels, what I don't like with utility easements is when they're cutting directly through the center of my property. If they're towards the back or even towards the front, they're not a big deal. It's very normal for them to be at the front of properties. You can put driveways under them. You just cannot build under the under the utility easements. On bigger properties, it affects the land value very little, if at all, if it's in the right spots. On little properties, if it affects buildability, some people don't like living by them. If it's through the middle of your property, it's only 1 acre, whatever it is. So that's something to keep in mind. But if they're in the right spot stand on the property, it affects it little to none.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what you're saying is a lot of this business model, Ron, is it just really depends on the situation, unfortunately. Like people want how much does it affect the price per acre? Like a lot of these things, it's so different because each piece of land's different, each utility easement's different. So a lot of things in this business model, guys, are just such case by case scenarios. Other than that, Ron, let's get into the show. Today's topic, tools we use to flip land. And as land investors, Ron, we come across many services and tools lot are brought to our plate for people wanting to try them out, test them out. Let me tell you, just to start this topic off, Ron, most are garbage and a big waste of time. Most tools and services are garbage and a big waste of time. And then there's a select few that are good and actually going to get you a return on investment, Ron.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of like this episode, Dan, is because when you're like starting in something, you can go down like the tools, resources, applications, uh, loophole where it just there's tools after tools, and not every tool, any tool is going to have it all. But there's also the ones that we've tried, tested, and all this stuff. So I think this can be very valuable for listeners.
And you brought up a good point, or it just made me think of it, Ron. Tools are tools. They're not solutions, right? So most don't go into, a tool or service thinking it's a complete solution. You're still going to have to do some work. You're still going to have to do some research. There's not many solutions out there that are going to be efficient from what we've seen, but we're going to go over specific things. Next thing I wanted to touch on, trying new things out, kind of like you just said. Trying new things out, but not committing long term. Hey, let's give this a shot. They seem like they have a good company. I liked my meeting with the sales rep. It seems to be able to provide a lot of value to our company. Let's try it out for 3 months and reevaluate. You don't need to get in a year contract. It's not a forever relationship necessarily. Try things out. Like we always preach trying new things out. Obviously, be careful. Obviously, do your research. Obviously, make sure you can get out of the contract, things like that before signing and doing all that. But trying new things out, you can get I think there's a lot to be said about that, Ron.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're not willing to do that, it's just kind of your old tool. Some people are trying to use the same tools, resources that used 12 to 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and things change. Like it's just a matter of thing. Other companies are started. There's so many more resources that have been started since maybe you had your changes. So, like Dan said, trying some things out, giving it a real opportunity also to go into your business and be a part of your business, opposed to just like trying it out just for the sake of trying it out. Actually try it out, put some time, effort. There are very few out of the boxes tools, resources, stuff like that that are going to have big impact on your business. Like Daniel said, you're going to have to use them, maybe change them a little bit for how you're operating your business. Not any tool or resource is going to be perfect for your business, especially when you're talking about the things that are going to make huge impacts on your business, whether it's a CRM or a data system, whatever it is. Those are going to need some in-house kind of manipulating to fit for your model.
Exactly. And even if you have a consultant for your CRM, you're still going to need to be managing the consultant, implementing a lot of the work, things like that. So there's always work to be done in some level, Ron. I did want to touch on on lead gen services for the land industry because there's a in real estate in general, there's a lot of lead gen services for wholesaling, flipping, all kinds of stuff. And this is really no different. And what we teach is to send out mail, send out text directly to the landowners, Ron, to try to get that conversation started. They call back, they send us the purchase agreement, all of that good stuff. There are lead gen services that will take a warm lead or that would take a bunch of records, call them, do whatever they do, text them, do the same methods, and then bring you the leads. We haven't tested that out too much. That's a big topic always in the community just because people want more leads, people want more money. It all starts on the acquisition side. So it's always a hot topic. We haven't had any that we've really tried out too much of just because we're really confident in our blind offer method and it's a really,
Mhm.
really good return on investment, Ron. But I did want to bring that up because that's always a hot topic.
Yeah, for sure. You hear a lot of people talking about it, and it's I don't want to say it's necessarily like a shortcut, but I know the ROI of what we see with what we're doing. Maybe it's something that, like we said at the beginning, like you got to test things out. Maybe it's something that we do need to test out, whether it's a cold calling service, something like that, to get us more leads. But that being said, the mail aspect is very scalable. So maybe that is something we'll test here in the next 6 months, Dan. I would imagine it is something that's on the docket to test and to see if it's effective. But that's definitely always a bigger thing. How to get more leads, how to get cheaper leads is kind of a huge focus when you're trying to flip real estate, whatever you're doing.
And keep in mind with this episode, guys, is the things we're talking about and the tools we're going to talk about have been vetted by us for the most part, and we do use them in our business. We never ever give out resources that we don't actually use and believe in, just because we want you guys to have good success, just like we have with these. We're very careful on what tools and services, Ron, that we do recommend. So all of these that we're going to be talking about are actually used by our company as well.
Absolutely, and yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. It's our brand, it's our name that we're putting on these things in terms of they have provided us good service. Obviously, things can change, and we try to keep our community updated. Like if there's something that maybe isn't working, or the company's not being ran like it was one day, and the product isn't being updated like we would hope it'd be, like then we'll find an alternative.
Or they grew so fast and didn't expect the volume
Mm.
and have growing pains, and a lot of times we'll try to get through those with them, Ron, and give them a chance because we look at things as 5-10 year partnerships instead of looking at 1 year. Like, yeah, maybe they don't do a great job for the next 2-3 months, but they've done a great job the last 3 years. Let's give them some time to kind of things happen in business, as we know. But let's start it off with some of the services we use. Let's talk about acquisitions. So acquisitions, how we acquire property, we send out mail, we send out text, you can cold call, you can do things like that. But the two main ones we teach are texting and mail. Mail's our bread and butter, Ron. We have a mailing service. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we partner with a mailing service to get discounted rates or to kind of get different rates for our students. Um, and get it at very low quantity. So you can order 500 pieces of mail and get this out. You're not stamping any envelopes. You're not stuffing any envelopes. It's all done for you with the mail template that we provide our students, as well as the data that is price, everything like that. So that is something that is extremely scalable. It's something where you can send out 10,000 mailers in 5 minutes if you really wanted to. And you don't have to do any of that repetitive work in terms of folding paper, all that stuff. So that's all done for you. And then the data service we use is datatree.com, or I don't know if it's .com, honestly, Dan. Datatree, again, our students get access to an account when they sign up for Datatree, and this pulls the property records. This is from our perspective, and we've tested a lot of these, like we already said. This pulls the most accurate property records, and it's the most user friendly in my mind, Dan. They have a good mapping software within it, and you can pull records very, very easily. You can also do a lot free. So you get charged once you pull records. You can do a lot for free on their site in terms of the mapping software, looking up property owners. You just cannot export data or reports without paying.
Yeah, DataTree's been incredible. We've used quite a few of those in the last few years, Ron. DataTree is clean, it's easy to use. There's a lot of good filters. They have good support. We have a good account manager. DataTree's been great. Let's talk about the skip tracing and the texting side of things. We use a company called Launch Control for texting. That's a texting service. Launch Control is not the cheapest service out there. It's like $500 a month, but they are very legal compliant and they have a very good system and they have very good support. Like the return on investment is definitely there. Launch Control is a really, really solid texting company. I've used probably 3 or 4, tested out 3 or 4 that were recommended to me. A lot don't have legal compliance things in place like Launch Control does. Launch Control makes it very hard to break the law. There's always changing regulations, and I couldn't be happier to partner with a company like Launch Control, Ron. I just believe in what they do. They have a very clean system. You will get deals. You will get a return on that $500 a month. If you guys are interested in that, Ron, what's the link we have there? If you guys are interested
I'll
in the
post it in the
texting,
comments, Dan. I'll post it in the description.
every all these will be posted in the comments. It's like landinvestingonline.com/launch control. But yeah, launch control and then to skip trace to actually. So what you do when we pull data from data tree, it doesn't give us phone numbers, it doesn't give us email addresses, anything like that. So you have to take it through. And if you guys are wholesalers, you guys know this. You take it through a skip tracing software. We use a company, there's a lot of them out there. And we use one called Direct Skip, and that's been really, really solid for us. You can buy them in bulk and get, 6, 7, 8 cents a record if you buy in bulk, or if not, it might be like 11 or 12 cents if you just do it single. I'm not really sure on the rates right now, to be honest with you, but we do have a partnership with them as well, and you get like 1,000 free records or something like that to skip trace, Ron. But those two, like the combination of direct skip and launch control for texting, has been very, very efficient.
Yeah, and launch control for one, like skip tracing, there's a lot more options. I don't think in terms of text compliance, text sending for what we're doing, there is a better system. Like we have tested a lot of these. There aren't as many options out there. And this one, like Daniel said, is extremely legal compliant. There are people out there signing up for email lists, waiting for a text message to come to so they can sue you. That is just there are people signing up for these
Litigators, yeah.
lists. Yeah, they are trying to get people who are doing stuff illegal, and it's not that difficult from them. And then they're going to sue you, or they're going to try to settle with you, and it's going to cost you more money than trying to do it the compliant way with something like launch control. Um, but going through the acquisitions, Dan, like you do that data up front, you send the mail, and then the answering service, I think, is probably next, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Answering service. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we have a company we called PatLive that we partner with. Again, they are answering all of our inbound seller leads. So what they do, or what they do really well, is they have a 24-hour service. They charge us per minute. They charge us upfront monthly and per minute if we go exceed our minutes per month. Um, and we give them a script, and with our script for how they're talking to our seller leads, we try to keep it quick and concise. So they're getting the information, and then we're going to call them back as salespeople and try to close the deal. They're not going to close deals. They are going to gather information for you, get them. They pair really well with our CRM, which is Airtable, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But they will get you the leads, and then you can call them back and close. They probably save us more time than anything, I would imagine, Dan.
Yeah, and like anything, there's multiple companies out there. Pat Live has done good for us over the last several years, Ron. And they're busy. That's a high turn. That's a hard company to run from them. But I think overall, like in the long term run, I know we hear a lot of some backlash from people using them, or they're taking too long to answer every once in a while, or whatever it is. Overall, they've done great. We have tested out other ones as well. We're talking to other ones, but right now that is still what we're using. They're still doing a good job. We're still getting acquisitions, Ron. But overall, yeah, it's been a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, their customer service, customer support when we have had issues has been, and that's what I look for in companies when we're trying to, like, when we're like, obviously you need a good service and their product needs to be good, which it's good. It's not the best. I don't know if it's the best it could possibly be, but it's a very solid product that is somewhat affordable. But then when there are issues that come up, they take care of them. They take care of you if they do mess something up. And that's one thing to keep in mind with a lot of these, especially like an answering service, Dan, is you need to audit what they're doing and don't just assume that everything's being done. Auditing your systems, auditing the people, your partners that you're using in terms of systems processes as you're doing this to make sure, like maybe they didn't answer the phone a couple of times. Like that's a big deal if that's an answering service.
Yeah. They might say they have an average answer rate of 4 seconds or 3 seconds. They might say this, they might say that. What Ron's saying, to always audit them once you're using them, always make sure they're doing what you signed up for. because a lot of the times you'll find gaps and holes in that. That's a really good point, Ron. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about CRM systems. So CRM's customer relationship management. That's what keeps your business organized, keeps your records clean, keeps your property through all the stages. You're acquiring the property, you're doing due diligence on the property, kind of takes it through all the stages. It's for sale, has all the links, has all the files, keeps everything organized, Ron. The one that we use now, that we recommend to use, that we even built out, partnered with Airtable and built out a CRM for, is Airtable, like I said. So we partnered with them. We built out a whole land flipping CRM for land flipping in general, but Airtable is what we did it off of. There's a lot of customizations, a lot of things you can do. You can scale up to 10, 20, $50 million business with Airtable, I believe. Probably even above and beyond that. There's a lot of customizations you can do. And it kind of works off why I like it, Ron, or why we originally started using it. It's kind of like an Excel format. So we have one base with actual our CRM and then other bases with our property records of where we're actually sending mail. And then you can connect them in different ways and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. We're still on like somewhat basic level in terms of Airtable. We keep on building and improving. That being said, Daniel and I, neither of us are developers. We've worked with developers on it, but it's something Airtable and any CRM you're working on needs to constantly be improved, tweaked based on your business and as your business changes. But that being said, this was like something we built, and this is something we sell to our students as well, or and non-students as well, as like an out of box CRM for land investors. But that being said, the product that we use is Airtable, and that has been exceptional for us. We've looked for other options. We've spent a lot of money on developers to try to develop other options for us that just weren't feasible or didn't like make
Hmm.
sense to make that change. Like they didn't have that drastic of a change for our business for us to make that huge change of changing platforms. And one thing Airtable is good at, Dan, is constantly updating, adding integrations. Like they are adding so much stuff. And that's why I feel confident in a system like that is they are constantly being updating what they're doing and trying to improve.
Yeah, completely agree. And then because they have the app integration as well, so there's third party developers that can create apps and connections and things like that. It works well with Zapier. It has a good form base, so you can create forms. It will go directly to your records. There's a lot
Yep.
of different things you can do on Airtable. We're just like Ron said, really just scratching the surface for what you can actually do. We spent $20,000, $30,000 on a custom CRM through Zoho, and we went through a whole CRM selection process, and we were building this whole thing out to come to realize, which is okay, it happens in business, but to come to realize we don't need to make this move right now. It's more of a hassle than it's going to help us. Like we don't need that to scale up. How can we scale up our business? Is it through a CRM right now? No. Is the CRM a bottleneck right now? No. And that being said, when it does become a bottleneck, I think Airtable has enough automations and things we can do within it and customizations to hopefully smoothen that out.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And it's not necessarily like we're trying, like, it's not necessarily more deals for us. And that's what maybe a more custom CRM could do. It's more so bigger deals. And like Daniel said, we can do 10, 15, $20 million of profit with our land flipping business through Airtable, no problem at all. It integrates with multiple people. Like we have ten employees now. So it integrates with all these employees really well and gives them all usernames so we can I don't know. It's worked really well for us, Dan.
Yeah, and that's the main. I mean, most people who are coming in this round want $1 million business or to make $1 million. And can it do that? Absolutely. Have I seen a better tool that can do that for this business? I personally haven't. We tested. I don't even know how many we've tested out. Could you imagine, Ron, having like a Zoho or Salesforce or that type of CRM that we're customizing for land flipping for people who are just getting started? Like, absolutely not. This Airtable is so good at being simple with the ability to expand, I
Mhm.
think. And that's the main thing. I do
That's
want
a
to
good
touch
point.
on some companies to be not companies specifically, but some tools and services to be careful with because there are a few out there I want to mention. I'm not saying don't use them. Like I said, test things out. But there are a few different things that I wanted to touch on, Ron. The first being to watch out for, just because of more of a quality thing, is the due diligence companies out there. There are companies who would do due diligence for you and then send you like a due diligence report. And a lot of them are overseas virtual assistants. And guys, if you guys have worked rural America and in a due diligence type of facet, you know that it's not as straightforward as this.
Mhm.
You can't just get the records online typically. You can't get they you don't know if there's a survey, you gotta dig. You gotta dig in the deed, you gotta get a deed back, you gotta get the surveys, you gotta, call the county 3 times to get the deed. There's just a lot of different things that go into due diligence. If they could do that and they actually get you the right due diligence, absolutely, that's a phenomenal service. But from what I'm seeing, they kinda just send you a black and white report that just doesn't provide that much value from my experience.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And like, they're not, I'm sure the way they build their companies is they're not liable for mistakes. So you send that $50,000 wire for that property that you rely on their due diligence, and then they missed an HOA, they missed a restriction, something like that. That's your $50,000. That's just their report. Maybe they lost a customer. So I don't know. That's why I love due diligence being in house, and we oversee that pretty heavily. We have a very qualified, our COO is very qualified for reviewing due diligence. So he does that. Like, there are a lot of layers that go into our due diligence with highly qualified people before we buy a property. And it's a risk thing. There is a huge, huge risk in relying on what is overseas people doing your deep due diligence. And there's a good chance things are going to get missed
Mm,
eventually.
there's definitely a reason why we've been using in-house American employees for due diligence. I would love to be able to outsource that overseas personally, but it's just really, really hard. You guys got to be very careful with it. Like Ron said, the profits in this business model are great enough to be able to afford an American transaction coordinator eventually, if you guys are serious about this, to afford a transaction coordinator who can also do due diligence on the properties and understand. That's the biggest thing. Understanding due diligence as well, understanding what this deed means, how it's referring to this plat. And now I got to go pull this plat from the county, things like that. And that's just something to keep an eye on. Another thing that I wanted to touch on are sales companies. So people who are actually, I see a lot of these as well, people who are actually negotiating with the sellers. So people who are answering the phone calls from the sellers and trying to get the property under contract. The the good thing about this is it is an option. They're trying to create an option for people who don't want to do sales, want to outsource it, aren't comfortable on the phones. Maybe they'll be better than you. The bad thing is this is such a new industry. There's not a lot of competition in that space and the quality's low. And also a lot of people like on these sales companies, a lot of them do wholesaling and land and house flipping and things like that and aren't specialized for land flipping. And land flipping, as we know, is a unique business and it's different. Like the way we work and the way we talk to these sellers and just how we send out blind offers and get them back, it's just a lot different. So I think there is an opportunity there for people to negotiate on the phones potentially, but it's hard because there's distance between you and them. It's not like they're working that closely with you to understand how you work and your pricing works and all of the stuff that goes behind these negotiations, Ron.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm to be honest, Dan, I'm highly against that stuff in terms of you have the time to make a 5-minute phone call and negotiate with the seller. There's so much value in those conversations for you. You don't like these deals are potentially like we talked about, like 50, $100,000 profit deals. You can make the time to make those phone calls. I'm really against that stuff. Like you said, there's no competition in it. Having just a random person answer your phone and try to get someone to agree to sell a $50,000 property is just it's not going to be an effective business model, and you will lose deals. I would imagine you'd lose multiple deals every few thousand mailers, honestly.
And let's be clear, the answering service, PatLive, we're saying that answers our calls. They're not negotiating with us. If you guys are in the business, you know that they're not negotiating. They're collecting information. They're information gatherers, and then we call them back. Our COO calls them back and tries to negotiate and get the purchase agreement essentially, and talk at a higher level because they don't know the business. So PatLive answers the phone. They go, "Apke Land, how may I help you?" Right, and then they say, "What's your reference number?" They ask them a few other questions to try to gauge their interest to get the information. And then we want Pat Live to be on the phone as little as possible with collecting the right information. And we ask them like 3 questions. And then boom, it ships over to our CRM. And then we call them back quickly. The problem if you have someone else doing it who's not a partner in your business or someone you know, or outsourcing it is like there's just too much profit potential and too many deals you can lose. If you're like we like to teach, if you're bad at it, either get better or find a partner or hire someone. Like those are kind of the 3 methods, Ron.
Yeah, exactly. Especially things like this, like sales. Like, it's just not something. I don't think it's something worth messing for messing with in terms of doing something like
Not
that
with
and
these
trying to.
profit margins.
No, absolutely
It's not
not.
like
Like
we're
if you're
selling a $30 product.
and it's not the same thing. That's the thing. Like no piece of land is the same. So
Yeah.
that's the most difficult thing is like there's so much like it is such and that's why we hired our COO is because he had the skill set of evaluating land coming into this along with a bunch of other things. Something that we don't see much is someone who's highly skilled in evaluating land. And I'm sure you're sure as hell not going to have that some 24/7 answering service, someone being able to evaluate land and negotiate based on that.
It's very rare that you will outsource something that is better than you as the owner, unless you're really bad at something. But like for me, like if I hire a developer, they're going to be better than me. But if I hire when you just got to realize when you outsource, one, they don't care as much as you because they're not you, they don't own the business, so they naturally don't care as much. And two, a lot of times they're just not as good, especially at the things you're good at. So you kind of got to go into it knowing that, but that's how you outsource is how you scale up. And I know we're getting a little off topic, but you got to understand that when we're talking about these tools and resources, like for example, the due diligence service, Ron, or what do we talk about? Lead gen services. They're
Mhm.
probably, if you get good at getting leads yourself, they're probably not going to do a better job than you. Plus, they're charging you a premium. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, I think that's a really good way to look at it. Like, you gotta pick and choose where to outsource things. There are some things you should not mess with outsourcing. And the 2 things that really come to mind is the due diligence and the sales even more so. But other than that, Dan, I think, these are all tools that we use and stand by. And I think it's the tools, resources, outsourcing is how you scale a business. But you got to choose the right ones. You got to partner with the right companies.
Yep. And as Ron said, check the comments for the links and discounts with all these services if you guys are interested. As always, thank you for joining. Please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe our YouTube channel and share this with a friend. It really means the world to Ron and I, but more importantly, it could help change the life of someone else. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next episode.